Have you ever actually heard Fred West talk?
Doesn't he? I want to say he has like a fairly high pitched voice, but so did Richard Chase, and I think that's what I'm thinking of.
No, he doesn't have a high pitched voice. He has it's a very kind of voice, but it's one of those things where when he talks, he's so aloof.
Which is weird because he doesn't have a class background upbringing that would sort of give him that attitude.
Yeah, exactly.
If that makes
And
sense.
it's interesting because again, the new Netflix documentary, they show a lot of police interviews with
Yes,
him.
that's right.
And when he's talking about things he just comes off as someone who just simply isn't very bright.
Well, I think a lot of people literally said that he was a dullard.
Yeah. But you hear him and it's so hard to imagine this is someone who is a literal monster.
I guess. I suppose when the demeanor is sort of low and slow, you don't think they're capable of explosions of violence.
Yeah.
But that's always what makes it all the more shocking.
Definitely.
Oh, man.
And it's going to get shocking.
Yeah, should we just get into it?
Yep.
Alrighty, everyone. I am Charlotte.
And I'm Dina. Welcome to the Grim Curriculum.
We're here on part 2 of our series on Fred and Rose West.
I have to say, you titled the episode A Marriage of Monsters.
Yes.
Loved it.
Well, I was sitting there and, sometimes we do a little subtitle or something.
Yeah.
Especially if a serial killer has a nickname, that kind of thing. But this time I was like, I think these two, their story is so nasty and horrific that they kind of need a title. And I was like, what better than A Marriage of Monsters?
Especially because you hear the names Fred and Rose and they just sound like a nice
English couple.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
You don't think that they're monsters. And I keep saying monsters, but that is what these people are.
I mean, Fred is neither here nor there. But when you think of the name Rose,
yeah,
it sounds nice.
Yeah.
She was not nice.
No.
She was horrible. If not, people will argue if she was worse than him or not. I don't know that you can compare, really, but she was definitely up there.
I am of the belief that she was worse.
I think it feels worse for me because I like to consider myself a girl's girl. I like to uplift women, and whenever I hear of or read a story like this where a woman is the perpetrator of extreme violence, especially against other women, it just makes me want to stomp you out.
She was definitely hornier than him.
That's true, which is wild because that doesn't sound possible when you hear a little more about that. But they were almost made for each other, I'd say.
Unfortunately.
It's a shame they got together. Last week, we discussed the early lives of Fred and Rose, along with their increasingly abusive behavior towards their children and those around them, not to mention the tragic death of Charmaine, Anna McFall, and the poor little boy that Fred hit with his ice cream truck.
I still can't get over that.
The police were literally like, well,
it happens.
Shit happens. It was an accident. Ugh.
Like in many cases that we cover, there were little to no consequences for their criminal behavior, and because of this, they were free to escalate their horrific behavior.
And unfortunately, they were just getting started.
We last left off with Rena, Charmaine's mother, growing increasingly suspicious when it came to the truth about her daughter. As we mentioned earlier, Fred would often drop off his children at the doors of social services, and she likely believed this was the case. Little did she know that Rose had already killed her.
Many believe that Fred, knowing the truth about what had happened, would hold it over Rose and use it to get her to do whatever he wanted.
This included her continuing to do sex work to earn extra money. He would often take erotic photos of her and use them in local ads for swingers. They would both invite men into their home to have sex with her, and on many occasions, she didn't even need to get paid.
Oh, Lord.
I found one of the newspaper ads.
Oh, whoa.
And it says, housewife looking for W.E. mail. And then a bunch of other stuff, which I learned stands for well endowed.
I was going to ask. I'm kind of didn't want to know now.
And it's this salacious nude of Rose West.
I'm surprised. I mean, I know we're in the 60s, the 70s, whatever, I'm surprised that a paper would agree to print that.
It was a swingers magazine.
Oh,
That's all
I
they
see. It
had.
was specific to.
No, this wasn't next to, like, ads for puppies or
Got
anything.
it,
No, this
got
was,
it.
like, all sorts of just, like, people looking to get they freak on.
Which is fine, by the
Yeah.
way. You wanna get freaky deaky? I'm fine with that. As long as everybody is consenting, no children, no animals.
And I don't wanna see Rose West naked ever again in my life.
Absolutely not. Thank you. We do want to stress that despite what Rose would say later, it's very likely that she was a very willing participant when it came to this stuff. She would engage in sex acts within their home while Fred watched in another room using a peephole that they had drilled into the wall. Ew.
There's a picture of the peephole too,
Ew.
and it's, like, really low, so he would, like,
Lay or
he'd probably be, like,
crouch?
on his tummy. Because remember, notorious premature ejaculator here, so he probably, did his thing and then just I picture him, like, with his hands on his chin,
Literally,
his
like
little
kicking
feet
his
are
feet
up.
up?
Yeah.
Ugh, so
I hate
gross. I
it.
hate it. I hate it.
In August of 1971, Rena, in a desperate attempt to learn the truth about Charmaine, sought out Fred's father, Walter. Walter likely approached Fred, and this is what led to the series of events that would lead to Rena's murder.
It's possible that she came over in an attempt to discuss custody agreements with Fred. At some point, she became intoxicated and was strangled. Her body was dismembered, and Fred once again saved her fingers and toes as trophies. The thing is, if he was disposing of these bodies because they were inconvenient to him,
Mhm.
you know, serial killer stuff, fine. But he's keeping trophies.
I think of Rodney Alcala
Yeah.
with the earrings.
Ooh, yeah.
This is fingers and toes. Where do you keep them? Does he have a box of them?
I'm picturing a shoebox, to be
Me too.
honest. They're probably all gnarled and nasty because, you're not keeping them in the fridge, I would hope. But they might have been.
Who knows?
Did they even have a fridge is the question.
Oh, they don't strike me as fridge people.
No. Her remains were placed in various plastic bags and near some trees not too far from the town of Muchmarkle.
That same year, Fred and Rose became close with a new neighbor of theirs named Elizabeth Agius and hired her to babysit on multiple occasions. One day, the two returned home, and Elizabeth, who was caring for the kids, casually asked them what they had been up to.
Fred laughed and said that they had been cruising and looking for young virgins and suggested to her that with Rose in the car, they may be more willing to go with them. Elizabeth assumed that he was just joking and didn't think too much of it. Oh, I'd be thinking much of that.
Me too.
I would be thinking much of that right out of the door and never coming back.
Soon enough, Fred began to proposition her for sex. This would ultimately result in her being drugged and assaulted by him.
With Rena gone at this point, Fred finally followed through with his promise to marry Rose. The two were wed on January 29th, 1972, in a small ceremony at the Gloucester Registry Office. They did not invite anyone other than Fred's brother John, who served as their witness.
Fred lied on the paperwork and said that he was not married at the time, because after all, Rena had not been reported missing yet and they were still legally married. Somehow, this error was not caught.
Well, everything was on paper in those days, too.
Yeah, they took you at your word.
Exactly. Rose soon became pregnant with her second child, and the couple moved into the now infamous 25 Cromwell Street. The house was large with a spacious cellar and garage.
They rented the home at first, with Fred later purchasing the 3-story property for £7,000, which is around $215,000 Canadian in today's money.
That tracks. I do remember my grandparents saying that they bought their house for. Now, their first house was definitely a fixer-upper of the highest degree. They bought it for £4,000. Wow. And then they sold it for like triple once they'd renovated and everything. But I'm like, 1972, buying houses for $4,000.
With one job.
8
hours a day.
One vehicle could get your family wherever it needed to go.
Yeah.
Ugh, what a time to be alive.
To supplement their income, the upper floors were rented out to boarders. Fred told Elizabeth that he had big plans for the cellar and that he was going to turn it into a spot for Rose to entertain her clients, as well as convert it to a torture chamber. They added various restraint devices and fitted the room with pornographic photos, which included children and animals.
Ugh. They tested the torture chamber on 8-year-old Anna Marie, their own daughter. Fred and Rose undressed her, tied her up, and gagged her, all the while telling her that she was lucky to have two parents who loved her enough to teach her how to satisfy her future husband.
Burn them at the stake.
Publicly. Oh my God. Throw rocks at them. Jesus.
That's the thing. These are some of the most revolting people that we've talked
You
about.
just can't wrap your mind around it.
No.
Doing shit like this, not only to children, which of course is horrific and hellish and 0 out of 10,
Mhm.
their own children.
Yeah.
Oh, monsters.
Her assault was so brutal that she could not go to school for several days. The abuse would continue, with Fred often coming home on his lunch break to repeat what he had done to her.
On June 1st of that year, Rose gave birth to another daughter who, because of her date of birth, they named May June.
I hate them so much.
Very creative, guys. Super creative.
Shortly after the birth, Rose returned to sex work. The couple began to advertise heavily within the West Indian community. Along with this, Rose enjoyed casual sex with both men and women. It was clear that she enjoyed the brutality when it came to the women. She would often choke them and use large sex toys without their consent. Whenever they would cry out in pain, Rose would calmly ask them, "Aren't you woman enough to take it?"
She's so gross. And this is all while Fred is continuing to watch from the other room through his nasty little peephole. He actually purchased a baby monitor so he could watch from wherever he wanted to in the house.
Convenient.
This is same level of him getting like an ice cream truck to
Mhm.
troll. It's like you're now using a child's freaking item to do the nasty things you're doing.
And you know,
It's so wrong.
you know what else really bothers me? They would talk to their own children. I mean, obviously, some of the kids knew what this room was a little
Mhm.
too well, but they would refer to this space as Mummy and Daddy's room.
Oh, gross. He also installed a doorbell specifically for clients, as well as a light that would turn red whenever Rose was using it so that the children knew not to bother her. Literally having a red light in your own house.
Yeah.
Wow.
She's got her own red light district.
Literally.
Rose fully controlled the family's finances, and most of the money that she earned was used to upgrade the room. So, what they did was they installed big metal beams along the ceiling so that they could suspend people from it.
Oh,
And then at
gross.
one point, what Fred did was, because at first it was a short ceiling,
Okay.
so he dug into the floor.
To make it taller.
Yeah, so he didn't have to crouch.
My God.
So they spent a ton of money.
And effort and time.
Yes.
Holy cow.
Not to mention all of the sex toys that they had.
Oh, gross.
It's all terrible.
I am all for freedom of sexuality. Do what you want again.
Yeah.
As long as everyone's consenting, no animals, no children. These guys literally have corrupted and warped anything good
Mhm.
about that kind of world. Like, there's sex clubs and stuff, right? Like, if
Yeah.
you want to look into stuff like that or BDSM or whatever, there's places where you can go to learn and like enjoy yourself for sure.
Mhm.
This is just like the corrupted nightmare, like negaverse
Yeah.
version of that. And I hate it so much.
The thing that makes it even creepier is in 1994, when all of this stuff gets revealed, a lot of the kids had actually been sleeping in the cellar.
Oh.
And so when they went there and when they, the police are investigating this area, you see these sex toys and these restraints and things like that. And then you see paintings of Disney characters on the wall and drawings that the kids have done. And it's all combined together into this mess.
I don't know. I mean, it must have taken years of therapy for anyone involved to like actually recover from this, including like the police officers that discovered it all in the end and whatnot. I can't imagine trying to scrub that image from your brain.
We don't know a ton about their surviving children, but I know for a fact that they are not doing well.
Well, I can imagine they just want to be left the hell alone.
Yeah.
Ugh. In late 1972, the couple picked up 17-year-old Caroline Owens and hired her to work as their nanny. They spoke with her family and promised them that they would take good care of her while she was working for them.
Carolyn was a good looking young girl and quickly became the subject of both of their attention. Fred and Rose began to compete with each other to see who could seduce her first. Fred even offered her abortion services, and I quote, if she should ever need them, and added that many of his clients were so happy with his work that they would offer to please him sexually after he performed an abortion on them.
Which at this point, like, has he actually performed an abortion? Because going back to last episode, he was about to perform one in the forest when someone, like rattled them up and they all ran away. Is he just like, yeah, no problem, I can do it?
We know he has the tools.
I guess. Oh, so gross. This is like really upsetting.
It is.
So
It
upsetting.
really is.
Needless to say, Caroline thought that they were repulsive human beings and she was not interested, and she attempted to leave the home. They found her hitchhiking and they apologized for their weird behavior. She convinced herself that maybe she had misunderstood their intentions and she got into their car.
One of the lessons that I have learned when it comes to being a woman and protecting my own safety, and I will scream this at the top of my lungs, especially to any younger people who are listening, is you don't always have to be polite.
No.
Sometimes it's okay to make a scene, and sometimes it's okay to be a bitch.
100%. I would rather you be a bitch or cause a scene and look like a weirdo than be dead.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, make weird like dog noises at them, bark at them, get them away from you. It's fine. You'll never see them again, and good riddance. I would much rather you act like a lunatic to get someone away from you than feel that you need to go along with them out of politeness.
Yeah, definitely.
Do not be polite.
When Caroline was in the car, Rose began to fondle her, causing her to try to escape. Fred stopped the car and punched her until she lost consciousness. She was taken to their home and was given tea that made her pass out. When she woke up, Fred was assaulting her while Rose watched. She began to scream, and Rose smothered her with a pillow and performed oral sex on her.
Caroline, realizing the gravity of the situation, stopped fighting back. The following morning, one of the children knocked on the door of the cellar and heard Caroline screaming. Fred, upon hearing this, simply told her,
I'll keep you in the cellar and let my black friends have you, and when we're finished, we'll kill you and bury you under the paving stones of Gloucester.
Again, here comes that little sprinkle of racism again that sort of weaved its way throughout the story.
Yeah.
These are not good people. He also told Caroline that they had killed hundreds of women and that they brought her to the home for Rose's pleasure. After the assault, they calmly asked her if she would stay and continue to work as their nanny. Caroline knew she had no choice if she wanted to survive and saw this as a way out and agreed. She began cleaning their home and escaped later that day when Rose wasn't watching her. She ran home to her mother. At first, she was ashamed of what had happened and didn't tell her the truth. But eventually, her mother saw the bruises all over her body, and together they went to the police. Thank goodness.
Yeah.
Because again, it's still in a day and age, well, and even to this day, a lot of people feel a lot of shame as the victim. You absolutely shouldn't. This was not your fault.
Yeah.
But I'm glad her mom was mom enough to be like, you know what, this is horrific. We're going to the police.
Yeah. In January of 1973, Fred and Rose went on trial for the assault. He was 31 and she was 19 and once again pregnant. Shockingly enough, Fred convinced the judge that 17-year-old Caroline was a willing participant. When it came time for her to testify, she did not want to relive the experience. Fred and Rose pleaded guilty to a lesser charge of assault.
The judge reported that Fred West was
a docile sort that did not look capable of violence.
Just because they look a certain way. Don't judge a book by its covers, guys.
And you know what the thing is, too, is he does have some history. He doesn't have a ton of history.
No.
Rose doesn't have any, like, big criminal history, right?
But Fred does.
He does.
Fred's been to prison.
Yeah.
So how can the judge look at this man, seeing the rap sheet, and being like, nah, he doesn't look, he looks too docile.
He's really nice to me.
He's just a lamb of a guy.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, poor Caroline, traumatized and assaulted for life.
Yeah.
Disgusting. In the end, Fred and Rose were simply sentenced to pay a pitifully small fine.
It was something like 25 pounds each.
If I were Caroline or Caroline's mother, I'd burn that whole thing to the ground. I'd burn their house to the ground. I'd burn the courthouse to the ground.
Interestingly enough, later on in this episode, someone will want to try that.
I don't blame them.
Right?
I don't blame them, honestly.
This entire thing taught Fred and Rose a few things. They saw that they could commit crimes together and get into very little trouble. If they wanted to completely get away with it, all they needed to do was stop leaving witnesses.
And you did just mention it, and I want to reiterate for anybody that missed it while you were listening, Rose is 19 years old.
Yeah.
Doing all this stuff.
That's insane. My birds are very upset by this.
I don't blame them either. They hear us yelling probably, and they're like, yeah, fuck those people.
Yeah. They're really
They're going for it. Fred and Rose became friends with a young seamstress named Linda Goff. Eventually, Linda moved into their home to work as, you guessed it, their nanny. Her mom received a letter saying that she had found a place to live and would write to her in the future. It's likely that Rose herself wrote this, not Linda.
It's unknown exactly when she died or how it happened. What we do know is that she was taken to the cellar. Fred and Rose wrapped her head fully in packing tape and shoved 2 small tubes into her nasal cavity just so she could breathe. She likely died while she was being tortured or after the two had finished with her.
Once again, she was dismembered with Fred saving her fingers and toes. Her body was buried in the garage. Rose went through her belongings, took what she liked, and burned the rest. 3 weeks later, Linda's mom arrived at the home to check on her daughter.
Rose answered the door wearing Linda's slippers, and outside were several pieces of her clothing that she had washed and hung to dry. Linda's mother noticed this and asked where her daughter was. Rose simply told her that Linda had been fired for abusing the children, and her mother believed this and never reported her missing.
I mean, I'm not sure what kind of relationship Linda and her mom had.
Not a good one.
But clearly not a good one. If a complete stranger tells you your daughter was abusing my children and you know that that's not at all like your daughter, you would surely ask more questions. Right? She just walked away.
Yeah, no, the way that I kind of understood this story was Rose tells her, you know what, she was beating the kids, so we fired her. She left a bunch of her stuff here, whatever. And her mom's like, okay. All right.
Sounds all right.
That's Linda.
In August of 1973, Rose gave birth to their first son, who they called Stephen. A few months later, the couple abducted 15-year-old Carol Ann Cooper. Carol Ann lived in a children's home in Worcester and was last seen spending the evening with her boyfriend at the movie theater. She was waiting for the bus when the Wests spotted her. It's unknown whether she got into their car willingly or was dragged in, but what we do know is that as soon as she got in, her face was bound with surgical tape and she was tied up.
So when we say bound, they would do like 10 to 15 layers of tape on their faces.
So there's no getting out of that.
No.
Like you can't claw your way out of that because it's probably so tight as well. And then the panic sets in and you can't breathe properly.
They took her to the home and suspended her from the ceiling beams where she was sexually assaulted and then murdered. Her body was dismembered and she was buried in a shallow grave in the cellar.
Before we started recording today, you mentioned that basically Fred and Rose have this pattern of they do a couple of things and then they murder someone. And then they do a little bit more and then they murder someone.
Yeah.
And you guys can see it. Boom, 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 boom. But the more they killed, the more things escalated. They're now abducting women on an even more alarming basis. On the 27th of December that year, they abducted Lucy Partington from a bus stop. And after killing her, Fred admitted himself to the emergency room at Gloucester Royal Hospital for severe lacerations to his hands. He likely sustained these injuries while dismembering her.
It was around this time that Swiss immigrant Therese Siegenthaler began living in the upper part of the home as a boarder and soon became the subject of their torture. Therese was buried in the cellar, and she was never reported missing by her parents, who were unaware of her whereabouts to begin with.
Oh, poor girl. On November 15th, 1974, the Wests met their next victim, 15-year-old Shirley Hubbard. She was also abducted at a bus stop and was last seen by her boyfriend, who she promised to meet again the following day.
It's interesting because we talk about patterns a lot.
Yes.
And sometimes you see these patterns, but people kind of veer off or they try new things or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
They figured out what worked
And just
and
went with
they
it.
just kept repeating it.
Which is shocking to me that no one picked up on it sooner, because women and girls, let's call it girls, they're all teenagers, they're going missing from bus stops at, I would say, a pretty alarming rate. How are people not noticing?
Well, it's one of those things where they figured out the type of kids that they could prey on.
Yes.
Because a lot of these were runaways. A lot of them were in the foster care system. And when they would ever, if they did get reported as missing, the police would be like, oh no, she's just took off with a boyfriend.
The
or she'll
classic
come
runaway
back.
situation.
Exactly. Or they just had no one to even notice that they were gone, which is so, so sad.
Incredibly tragic. They forced Shirley into their cellar and again wrapped her head completely in tape. This time, they shoved small tubes 3 inches into her nasal cavity and extended it out to about a foot outside of the mask to make breathing as difficult as possible, which you've kind of made the mistake with another girl who passed away because of this. Why would you make the same mistake again if you're trying to prolong the pleasure, if you will?
And the tube itself was like 1/8 of an inch.
Yeah, like surgical
So
tubing
it's
or something.
tiny.
Yeah, you can't breathe out of that.
I don't think they cared whether they lived or died. They've already kind of noticed themselves that, hey, if we don't leave witnesses, no one comes looking for them
No.
anyway. So we might as well just make this as horrific as possible for them because that's how we like it.
Ugh. They buried Shirley's body in the cellar under pictures of Marilyn Monroe. She was reported missing, but there would be no leads at all.
In April of 1975, Fred and Rose turned their attention to one of their boarders, Juanita Mott. She had been living at 25 Cromwell Street for around 2 years and had visited the house a few times before moving in. She was motivated to live there due to the extremely low rent, because they would offer cheap rent
Yes.
if you were a young woman. Because at first
Of
they had men
course.
and women and families and things like that. And then they realized, hey, if we take in these people who are really struggling,
We can lure them in.
exactly.
The Wests hung her from a noose suspended from the ceiling in the cellar. She was tied up in intricate bondage knots and was most likely killed by some sort of blunt force trauma during her torture. Her body was again buried in the cellar. Fred would later justify her death by saying that she was begging them to kill her. Yeah, I bet she was.
Yeah, you're torturing her.
That doesn't make it okay. You put her in that position.
That's what he said to cops. He was like, oh, she was asking for it. I just did what she wanted.
So angry, so upset right now.
Tragically, Juanita's parents never reported her as missing either.
I don't understand this. Again, I know a different time. These girls were considered runaways or whatever, but how do your own parents not notice? Or not, they notice but don't care enough to mention it. Hey, we haven't seen our daughter in 6 months, a year,
Yeah.
2 years. Oh, we haven't seen her in a decade.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness. If they had reported her, Fred and Rose potentially could have been investigated, and the truth about 25 Cromwell Street would have been revealed before even more lives were taken.
It's not to say that the police had never visited the home. Fred was still engaged in petty theft, and drug use was often reported in the house. Despite this, there was still little to no investigation done.
The Wests would often host parties with many underage guests who would enjoy copious amounts of alcohol and cannabis. Whenever they left, Fred and Rose would always tell them to make sure all of their friends knew how much fun they had and how nice the Wests were to be around.
If you are a teenager and there is a married couple, one of whom is in his, mid 30s with a very young wife, and they're hosting parties and telling you to tell people how much fun they are, run away.
Very fast. Run
Never
far
look back.
and fast. There's no reason a 31-year-old should have any interest in anyone under the age of 20.
No.
Period. Period.
Mhm.
Ugh. On May 10th, 1978, the West took the life of another one of their boarders. Shirley Robinson was 18 years old and engaged in casual sex with both Fred and Rose. At the time of her death, Shirley was 8 months pregnant with Fred's child. Rose was also, once again, pregnant herself. The three of them had engaged in a relationship together.
Nice little throuple.
A little polyamory there for you.
It is likely that Shirley wanted Fred to leave Rose for him, which is what resulted in her death. It's suspected that Rose killed her herself. This is theorized because of how sloppy her dismemberment was. So, Fred, he's gotten good at it.
He's also older, maybe a little stronger. Rose is still pretty young at this point. She'd be 22-ish.
Yeah.
And she's not a big lady.
No.
Plus, she doesn't have the, like you say, the experience doing this a few times already.
The other thing that stood out about this particular murder was that she was actually scalped, which they didn't see with any of the other victims.
No, and not to say that Fred couldn't escalate and try new things.
True.
But it'd be weird to just suddenly happen.
Mhm.
And also, were her fingers and toes taken?
I believe that they were not, actually.
So that would also
Yeah.
be another check mark in Rose's aisle.
What the whole idea here was that Rose kind of liked her first. So then they
Oh.
pursued her.
Yes.
And then they're in this little
Throuple.
throuple, and they both end up pregnant. This
Mhm.
was likely an instance where the child that Rose was carrying was not Fred's.
Oh.
So it was a client's
Yeah,
child.
yep, entirely
And
possible.
Shirley's now pregnant. She's trying to get Fred to leave Rose. And Fred goes to Rose and says, "Hey, you know what? You are the one who got us into this mess.
Yeah.
So now you're going to get us out."
Poor Shirley. On August 5th, 1979, Fred and Rose took the life of 15-year-old Allison Chambers. She was also in the foster system and had been sent to live at Jordan's Brook House, where she often ran away. She moved in with Fred and Rose, and she was forced to partake in sexual acts with them.
On one occasion, they involved two of their own children. Rose was reported to have laughed maniacally as she witnessed the horrific abuse. Her children would later describe her as insanely violent and say that she was the one who often instigated the torture. The kids later would say that they actually preferred their dad. Because Rose was the evil one in their eyes.
She was the malicious one,
Yeah.
the crueler of the two, I think.
Which is saying a lot.
No kidding.
Miraculously, Allison was able to get away, and she returned to the West home a few weeks later with the intention to burn it down, but changed her mind at the last minute. She shows up with a can of gasoline and matches, and then she's standing there and she's looking at this house, and she realizes it's not just Fred and Rose that are in there.
It's the kids.
It's the kids, it's the other boarders,
Oh.
and she leaves.
She's absolutely right. I'm glad she didn't burn that house down in a way, because I'm in two minds about it now. Because on one hand, if she had started a fire, it would have drawn attention to it. And because a lot of the victims were buried in the garage and in the cellar, it would have raised it, and then they would have been all there to see.
Yeah.
However, in burning the house down, yes, she's absolutely right. It wasn't just Fred and Rose living there. There were other people that she would have affected, but also she might have destroyed evidence as well.
Yeah, that's true.
So I can see myself standing there with her wanting to burn that fucker down. Absolutely. Because what an evil, evil place.
Yeah.
The evil was just seeped into the walls at that point. But I'm glad that she did walk away in a way very similar to one of the police officers that tracked down Ed Kemper. And I believe that said, oh no, sorry, it was Richard Chase.
Yes.
That said, I wanted to kill him and I would have been justified in doing it, but I wouldn't lower myself to that level.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's not quite what was going through her mind, but I'm glad she didn't lower herself to their level.
Yeah.
Because if someone had got hurt, it would have been her in prison for it.
It's true.
So
it seems that after this, the West took a little bit of a break from killing and Rose heavily focused on her sex work. Fred continued to steal in order to upgrade the torture room further.
It wouldn't be long, though, before Fred and Rose once again turned their murderous attention to one of their own children.
And that's where we'll pick back up next week.
Just in case you guys weren't sick and tired of the pattern that is already formed.
The thing among everything that continues to bother me. Fred West, spoiler alert, long gone.
Yeah, he dead.
Took his own life.
Yep.
Very shortly after he was caught. That bitch, Rose.
She still be kicking.
She is still out there. I tried to find pictures of her, what she looks like now.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep looking. I couldn't find any.
She's got to be in her 80s.
Oh, she's old.
Yeah. Not 80s, maybe late 70s.
Ooh. But as far as I know, she's doing just.
She's, I think, another one of these, not quite a Catherine Knight levels of mama in the prison kind of situation or nana in the prison. But she's had relationships in prison, Myra Hindley being one of the infamous ones. Yeah, she's living her life in prison, but she's still living her life.
I don't remember if we talked about this on mic or off mic, but a lot of people would say, and this is like recently, that she just walks around nude.
In prison, just like in the showers and stuff. Yeah, nasty. If I were another woman in prison, I don't know, for whatever reason, and Rose West is walking around with her yitties out, I'd be like, hi, guard, can you do something about this? Can you go put her in the nonce section or something? Like,
the thing is, she is a shameless human being.
I think that's what it is. No shame whatsoever. Never had any. No. Never developed any. Shame is a very personal thing as well, right? Like, you hold shame. Like, you can only be ashamed of something if you make yourself feel ashamed of something. It's kind of like guilt in that way. It comes from within. She's never had it.
No.
Didn't have it from day one.
No.
Ugh,
Dozy Rosie.
Dozy Rosie indeed. We are now at the end of the episode, of course, where we do our little outro and we give a shout out to all the beautiful folks listening across all the platforms, but especially to the fabulous supporters on Patreon, of which there are quite a few, I'm happy to say. We have a few different tiers over there. Our free tier, you get early episode reveals every week, and there's a few other things on there for you as well. Everyone in our paid tiers gets the video versions of these episodes, so if you'd like to see the faces that our voices come out of, Patreon is the place that you can do that. Our highest tier, our Grim VIPs, of course, their special perk is they get a shout out at the end of every regular episode. And so, as always, a wonderful, splendiferous thank you to
Mayhem Mudkip, Lisa, Nova, Kevinus Musicus, Brian, Bob, Paranoid Pop Rocks, Steven Centauri, Judy, and Atlantean Jedi. And let me tell you, you should add your name to that list, dear listener.
I know. I want to hear some more names on the list.
Let's do it.
The other thing, too, is we will be recording Extra Credit on Sunday. If you are listening to this on the Saturday it comes out. So if you want to send some stories to us, I want to hear about the thing that almost killed you, whether it's crazy or weird or wacky or wild. And if you send them in before we record tomorrow, we'll read them on the show.
I love it.
Yeah. Send them in.
How you almost became a strange and unusual death.
Exactly. Exactly. I want to hear it. Thank you all so much for listening. This has been the Grim Curriculum.
I have a bird fact.
How apropos.
All right. So the woodpecker.
Oh, yes.
Has a tongue that goes into its mouth, all the way up and around its brain, almost completely around their head, so that when they're woodpecking, the vibrations don't damage their brain. It's a little cushion.
Their tongue?
Yeah.
I'm going to have to go Google a diagram
You
of
should.
this.
It's fascinating.
Y'all need to do that too.
Google woodpecker tongue and thank me later.
Bye.
Bye.